Hello and welcome to Paradigm Playbook, a podcast for entrepreneurs in the business of sports. Your hosts, Dave Kozak and Steve Cook, are business owners, successful entrepreneurs, sports enthusiasts, avid readers, and longtime friends. For years, they've read every business book on the market and built successful companies with what they've learned. This podcast will give you the critical takeaways in just 15 minutes a week. It's a quick and easy playbook for building a winning sports business. And now, here are your hosts, Dave and Steve.
Did we help you learn, grow, and improve? Leave us a review to let us know how we're doing. Thank you.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Paradigm Playbooks podcast. I'm your host, Dave Kozak, alongside my co-host, Mr. Steve Cook.
Good morning, David.
Sir. And as always, we got our color man in the back, Niall.
How's it going, folks?
All right. So, Steve, we started down a path talking about customer service, and we kind of left off with, this idea of setting clear expectations. And I think my comment was follow through is paramount. And I think today we need to discuss that follow through portion, which is, arguably the operations side of customer service.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you back up to the very beginning when we were talking about prospecting and bringing people into the circle, I think the customer journey from beginning to end is a continuum that I think can never become disconnected.
Correct.
So, and it's why so often customer service departments are now customer experience, and the customer experience comes from the time they met you. So everything you're doing is leading towards, how they're going to feel, what their experience is from beginning to end.
Yeah. And, I told that story about the PRX stuff that I bought where every box had somebody's handwritten stuff on it. And that's part of that customer experience. And so in the follow through of that, right, the quality of the equipment is what they sold and what persists today. And no, obviously I'm on their email list. I get all that, but I'm more talking about the business that is not a drop ship business. It's not a pack, order, and play business, right? And the end user is not just the purchaser that may not purchase again, may purchase again, but the business where it's a constant flow. Right. And it's a constant servicing operation, or, we talk about sports businesses all the time, right? I think the Achilles heel of a sports business is when a client pays you once and never pays you again.
Yeah. And it's in the sports business, you're also talking to a buyer and a user. So we have, in the children's business, you have one person paying and one person. So in essence, and sometimes it's important that the entire family has the right experience here. So from the purchase, the sign up, to the registration, to the completion, to the presentation, all the way through it, that experience is mom, dad, child, brother, sister. And in our business, we have to be aware of everyone's experience. And sometimes it's just the experience of the little brother that's not in the class.
Yeah.
It's very easy, and we see it at Grand Slam. I've seen it at gymnastic clubs. That we can't keep coming back here because little Johnny, 3-year-old, it can't sit still, and we don't have a way to solve that problem. It's common to say, "Well, that's not my problem. I didn't agree to it." Well, if you want to keep that student, it is your problem. So I think we have to make this customer experience very overarching in terms of bringing in the entire family.
Yeah, without question. I mean, it goes right back to the bank and the lollipops, right?
Yeah.
Why do they have lollipops at the bank? So that the kids are excited to go to the bank and they don't hem and haw when mom or dad says, "Hey, I gotta run to the bank." They're ready to rock and roll and stay in because they know they're getting a lollipop, right? And it could be something as simple as that, right? It could be something where if they enter your facility, you've got something for the youngins, right? It could be one of those paddles with a ball on the end. It could be some toy that costs you $99 to buy 1,000 of them, right? Or it could be something engaging that is designed for them, right? And this doesn't change based on sports business or not. It's thinking about the additional people around that are involved in it and what the follow through action items should be. And it's kind of that idea that you should be purposeful in what you do, right? And how you approach things.
I think you have to be aware of how you manage the worst of your business. You know, what's the worst part of that, and how do you manage that? I like I met a gentleman that was in Disney management one time, and you know, I was like, "What's the hardest part of your job?" And he says, "Managing the line," which is interesting, and because everybody would go to Disney. They would wow about the rides. You know, I went on Space Mountain. I did the roller coaster. I did all that, but the lines were just off. So in later years, and I'm still talking 20 years ago when they started really working on the lines. So the line becomes an entertainment in itself, so that not only are you not complaining about that line, that you're actually enjoying it. So at what point does someone... So Johnny, who's little brother of Susie, who is at dance class, and you have a table full of Legos, and all of a sudden it's Johnny saying, well, you know, when's Susie's dance class? Let's go. I want to play with those Legos. Yeah. So I think that's what you're saying is like, you have to think that through. What does your waiting room look like? And even the parents is, you know, it doesn't happen anymore, but you'd go in a waiting room and there's no Wi-Fi. I mean, it's like, what do you mean there's no Wi-Fi? It's like, that's what parents do.
Yeah. Well, and you know, let's jump into my industry, which is the financial services, college planning, and everything that we do. Our journey and follow through takes a different approach, right? We don't have little kids coming into an office and sitting around. It has happened before, and I have made arrangements to, you know, either put a TV show on or something to keep it so that it's, you know, we can have the 2-hour conversation we need to have. But it's now touch points. It's now that clear expectation and that clear follow through. And so what happens in our industry is I may have the meeting with you, Steve, but I may not be the person coordinating the rest of the deal or the rest of the arrangement that goes on. And so there needs to be a seamless transition from my perspective as to who's going to reach out, what they're going to reach out about, and how we're going to go about that communication. And so you don't just send a curt email that is short and, you know, you say, hey, Dave was really pleased about the meeting, thought we made some great progress. He has requested that I collect A, B, and C. Upon that, we'll schedule your follow-up meeting and go from there. And so it's that in different businesses take different, or different businesses have different requirements in how you follow through on the action, right? And you made a comment as we were talking yesterday in our meeting about what we were going to discuss today. And it was retention, right? That was you summed it up in one word. So we're talking about retention. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, I guess we are talking about retention. And going back to the beginning of this conversation, we said customer experience, right? The customer experience needs to feed into the next iteration of that journey, right? And so in your case, it may be selling a lesson package. It may be, buying a membership for batting tokens. It may be, hey, they finished their lesson, they spend $20 on the arcade, or they have a birthday party there, right? There's a continuation of that. And so when we have discussed sales before, we've made the comment that everybody sells, right? And I want to clarify that in your example, because I think your example is the epitome of everybody should sell, whether they do or not. And I won't judge a business on that. I'll just say everybody should, because there is always more, specifically at Grand Slam, right? There, you did a baseball lesson. You can go in the batting cage. You can get a snack. You can get a candy. You can play video games. You can go miniature golf. You can play. You've got all these different things that you can do. And you've got birthday parties that they can host there. So that communication is either marketed in an outbound expense fashion, or it's discussed and presented while they're there, right?
And I think it's a problem that we see continuously and is not always part of our training. And we'll have people that have come to us for 5 years for baseball lessons. And they say, what's going on over there? And we say, birthday parties. They say, I didn't know you do birthday parties. Okay, so that's not on the customer. Yeah, that's on us because if nothing else, every coach in every lesson should be able to find out when the birthday is.
Yeah.
And so the customer experiences, and if they're taking a baseball lesson and they happen to get, a note saying, hey, I hear your birthday's coming up. If you want to have your birthday party, we would love to have you at Grand Slam so you can show off the great swing you've been working on.
Yeah.
So little things like that, but it becomes part of the continual communication with the customer. And in sports, we get distracted by the intention of the lesson. So I don't know if it makes sense, but if in a baseball lesson, we're distracted because all we talk about is baseball.
Mm-hmm.
And you forget that you're dealing with the entire entity that is your student, and they have other things going on in their lives, and you have to pay attention to all that. So I think the communication is key. And I'll go back on one thing. I do say all the time, everyone needs to sell. And if selling is communicating, then everyone needs to communicate. And in that case, everybody does. It's what you're communicating.
Bingo.
If you're not paying attention, if you don't talk to let's say the parent, Johnny had a great class today. This was exciting. Even, like 30 seconds, that communication, if you don't do that and you just walk away and give a wave, then you're communicating, a little bit of lethargy. You're communicating, we got that lesson over with.
Yeah.
Do we really care?
No. And that doesn't change at the corporate level. That doesn't change in everything, right? One of the things that I've encouraged all of my reps to do is to write a thank you note, right?
Mm-hmm.
Someone does business with you, thank them. But then also in that thank you note, right? And I use this in college admissions. I use this everywhere. If you have a purposeful reason to reach out to somebody, it's okay to thank and ask. Mm-hmm. It's okay to thank and recommend, or thank and take another step. So in any thank you note that I write, and I write daily thank you notes, it's thank you for your business, continued support. It's clients like you that make our business successful. If you know anyone else that's struggling with the same issues you have, please, I love referrals. It enables me to spend more time with clients like you. Just let them know. There's an ask in there. It wasn't, hey, you owe me 3 names of people that I can talk to. It was just be on the forefront of your mind that if you're talking to someone about college, hey, you've got us. Maybe they need us.
I think, I'm back in the sports world, but I think when, the parent and the child are both within your facility but separated, is a perfect time to take a real informal parental survey and find out, how's Susie enjoying this class? How's Johnny doing? Are you happy with Johnny's progress? The attitude that the parents come in with is not maintained exactly the way it is the whole time that they're there. That's going to be changing. So your approach has to be changing. And, as simple as, in baseball lessons, and you've given so many baseball lessons, you're aware of it, but you're so intent upon, their swings getting better, their hitting getting better. You're starting to see more line drives, the power's coming along. And then the parent says, well, he really thought he was going to be able to do more fielding. Okay, so we missed a point in that. If we're saying it's a baseball lesson, there's a lot of points to it. In gymnastics, they'll say, oh, she was really hoping that she could get on the trampoline. Well, if that's not part of your curriculum, then maybe you should turn around and make it part of your curriculum. The number one thing that keeps children in baseball, any sport activity, whether it's practice or competition, is how much fun it is. So it's worth sacrificing some progress for some fun. And I think that's all part of the customer experience that maybe we're not listening to.
Well, I think there's a big point here for entrepreneurs, which is a lot of times you're trying to get away from that day-to-day communication. And I think that's wrong. right? The point you made, Steve, about you've got a parent separated from a child. You've got a perfect opportunity to walk up to the parent and ask them some real questions for either their excitement or success or the disappointment and the improvements that you can make. And so that's a top-down thing. Owners got to be out there talking. Owners got to be out there discussing it and saying, hey, how do they feel about this class? I am not bashful, as you know. And every time I sign, and I have 4 children, and I sign them up, every sport, we've been in every sport ever. And anytime I go into a facility and I don't like how it's run, I find someone to discuss with it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I'm like, hey, there's the coaching is inconsistent. There's no training. It's all playing. Like I understand the balance of fun, and
I've been on the other side of this conversation.
and so, to me, not everybody's willing to just stand up and be heard.
No.
Some people are willing to give you the opinion that will matter to your business, but you have to be willing to ask the question to do so. And so if you're not investigating and keeping a keen eye to the customer, you're missing the mark.
Hey, if you're enjoying Paradigm Playbook podcast, please share and tag us on social media. Your support is greatly appreciated.
Yeah. And you have to value that opinion and not defend yours.
Correct.
So
Correct.
I mean,
it's not an argument. Well, we do this and this and this, and no.
Yeah.
Right,
so
that's a great. I never thought of it that way. That's a great point.
You're not. They don't need you to make excuses. And I think the number one thing is, you know what? I'm sorry, I didn't think of that. I should have thought that, they wanted more time fielding. I should have thought that, every week they go to balance beam first, and they're coming in, they want to go to uneven bars, or, whatever it is. Those things you have to think of. So I think 2 things. One is you're always communicating, but more so on the listening side.
Mm-hmm.
And then your business is always changing, adapting. And I'm not one that says you have to change your business for everybody that comes down. You have to have processes. You have to keep that thing. But you can consider what they're saying. And if you get 3 out of 5 saying, okay, here's an issue that I find in your program, then look at it and figure out how to do it.
Well, and I think there's also a mechanism of that communication pipeline where they may make a great point, but it may not land, right? Mm-hmm. It may be something to consider. All right, well, in my model, in my process, how can I just ratchet something and improve that particular aspect as opposed to reinvent something or change what we're doing, right? I'm not saying that your customer guides your business. That's a foolish proposition if you allow it to be so. But you can get external feedback that gives perspective. And being a good entrepreneur is about understanding as much perspective as humanly possible so that you can apply what you are an expert in from that perspective and try and solve it, right? We all want perspective. Steve, why are you a lifetime learner?
Yes. And I agree 100%. It's not that the customer's wrong. We haven't explained our position right. So, and I think if you always start that way, and I get annoyed all the time with my sales team that will say, no, you don't understand. I never want to say you don't understand. I want to say, sorry, I haven't explained this properly, or I haven't explained this completely. If you take that on yourself, and here we go again, everybody sells. And so customer service is all about reselling, what you've already sold once and keeping them in the system, which is retention. But I think you have to always be listening to what they say. And you're right. You don't have to change things, but maybe change how you communicate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, just going back to that simple example we were talking about, they're in there for 5 years of lessons. They never go on the other side. They never realize there's birthday rooms.
Yeah.
All right. Well, maybe I need to have something that says it's as simple as put a sign up.
Yeah.
It says, hey, we host the best birthday parties this side of wherever, And I think the other thing that, I want to talk about on the professional side is there's a concept of acres of diamonds, and it's about the farmer who was so upset because he had a giant farm in Africa, and he ended up selling it because he wanted to go chase diamonds, and turns out he was sitting on the largest diamond mine that ever existed, and that's the De Beers story, and it goes into the Temple University. Your customer base, the person that walks in your door and pays you $1 once, is your acre of diamonds. That is the person that you need to wrap your arms around. You need to maintain and engage with that person. You need to continue to help them and reach out, because maybe they don't have more children to send through your program. Maybe they don't have more money to give you to manage. Maybe they don't have more kids to go to college, but they have friends, they have neighbors, they have family members, they have aunts, uncles, cousins. They have people. And if you can show that person the journey, you create what we've talked about, raving fans, right? And if you have a tribe of raving fans, you're not going to have to spend excessive dollars on just outward marketing. It happens that way.
Yeah, there was I always remember half of ideas, but the half I remember is the white paper that was written, 1,000 True Fans. And the concept with 1,000 True Fans was that if you market your business and sell it strong enough to the point where you get 1,000 true fans, you can turn off your marketing, because it will run on its own. It will be self-contained beyond that point. But the definition of true fan is where it can't be a fan that you forget about and move on. And I think that we have to remember that it's a different story that we're telling after they've been in the business. They've been with us for a while. But if you think about how hard it is to get a new customer, and if all we did was take our existing customer base, and this is assuming that they're on a, pay to play, some, regimen of pay to play. If we only kept every customer for 6 more months, how that would have this exponential growth on your business. And I talk about it in growth of sports all the time. We don't need to get more people into gymnastics or dance. We need to keep them for 6 months longer. If we did that, the sport would boom. And it's happening in some sports where you're getting that age, we're pushing that age ceiling up and keeping people in based on that customer experience.
Yeah. And so to kind of bring it all back together in what we're discussing is we've kind of talked about sales, which is the acquisition side of a customer, and the idea that everybody should be selling. We've talked about sales as just customer service with an end product or a solution. And now we're talking about that customer service is the entirety of your organization's follow through to the goods and service offered or sold to someone. So if that is the continuum that you're on, right, your business is customer service. You just specialize in a particular product area. And so if that's the case, how many of those people can you keep in that continuum for how long a period of time? And how many, when you start thinking about how I want to grow my business, is it always have to be a wash, rinse, and repeat scenario? No. Can you add something that keeps that customer longer? Can you add something that expands the range that customer will spend with you? It's not always, hey, we just need a bigger facility so we can do more lessons, or we can do more meetings, or we can have more conference rooms. It's not always that. It's that continuation and that pace with which you want to scale your business. So, it's the idea of doing things on purpose for sure. But then just as we talk about the communication with the customer being so required and valid, the communication internally is equally required and valid. Meaning, if you have a desire to get a client from point A to point B and to continue it going point A to point B and point A to point B, you need to talk to your people about that. You need to explain that vision, right? Because that communication, if communication at the top is limited, then the communication at the bottom must be limited, right?
And the experience is everything from the look on an employee's face when they first walk in. If you're not up for greeting every customer, with a smile and a hi, how are you today? Then maybe you shouldn't be at work that day.
Yeah.
And then you have a different discussion. But I think it's everything from that to how you maintain the facility, how the parking situation is, if the foyer's clear and clean, all these things are all part of that experience. And you can get through any hardship if you're creative about it. If your waiting room is overly crowded, there's a creative way to do that, with, rotating seating or moving things out or changing the class structure, all those things. And we get in sports, especially, we get so locked into the same thing. We do it the same way. And I see it all the time. And, just having this discussion, I'm going back thinking, I got to talk to the coaches because, we're doing the same thing. We bring them in, set them up. They hit off a tee. They hit off a, soft toss. They hit. Okay, but we got to mix that up a little bit. And even if it's just to, kind of change the brain connections in there. But it's all part of the customer experience.
Yeah, no doubt. And that follow through component that we led with today is, again, I want to reiterate, I'm a big process person. Mm-hmm. I love processes. But when a process fails you, improve it, change it, and do it swiftly. Mm-hmm. Or when something is kind of happening on the regular, don't let it just linger. One of the crazy things that I have is bathrooms. Mm-hmm. I want to make sure facilities we're going to, the bathrooms are clean, nice, and usable. And while that may be something that I judge, I know I'm not alone in it.
No.
Right. And so I used to, when I started my working career, I was a lifeguard at a country club. And I never understood why we had to clean the bathroom 4 times a day. Never understood it. Right. I look back and it was a country club and the members of the club expect a facility to be clean and right. And it would get right to the top if it wasn't, right to the top. And so one of the requirements was constantly monitoring, going through the bathroom, make sure there's no toilet paper on the floor, things like that. And while that may sound like a trivial thing to do, it's a complete experience journey that you're building there. So we've talked before about how people greet people at the door, how people pick up the phone, how the bathrooms look, how the tables appear in a conference room. All of that is on purpose. And I think we lose sight sometimes of that. And we wonder why it's so hard to retain customers.
One last thing I'll throw in here is part of, and I'm going to put it in customer retention, but it's how you say goodbye to a customer that you're losing. We had just one recently that's been taking lessons with one of our great coaches for a long time. And they had, 5 lessons left in their lesson package. And they called up and said, the team they're playing on is really strongly encouraging them to go to this other coach. And it's creating some friction between the other players. And instead of saying, yeah, but our coach is better, which probably is, we went right to, hey, we totally understand that. If you would like us to put your lesson package on hold, refund your money, or turn it into tokens in the batting cages, we'd be happy to do it. And just know that your coach is here waiting for you when you return. That went further for us than trying to make an argument in terms of how to keep them. I'm pretty sure that person will be back at Grand Slam.
And if they're not, 5 others will come because that person said, hey, listen, if you're just starting this out, go see this guy.
Right. Anyway, but I think retention is good. Throwing a topic on the table, I know we're running out of time here for today, but in the future, Niall and I were having a conversation early about, businesses that scale and how you can scale and what is the baseline structure of the business if it's going to scale. So, and in the sports business right now, this is whatever today is. What's the date?
6th of September.
Thank you. I appreciate that. This is the time to grow that business. So you launch or relaunch, now's the time to do it. Kids need it, and the opportunity is there for knowledgeable entrepreneurs.
Yeah, and I will say just a couple of thoughts to keep in mind, right? Some businesses are infinitely scalable. Some businesses have limitations of time. Some businesses have limitations of space. And they're only limitations as much as you allow them to be. But what I would always focus on first is the scale in the environment you're in and the environment you want to be in. Okay, so I'll use the example. You got a facility in a 1,200 square foot space, right? What is the max scale of that? How many hours can you work? What's actually conceivable? And then, okay, with the right effort, how many of those spaces could you fill? And how big is big enough? And where is the scale line? And I think a lot of people come into entrepreneurship with this grandiose idea that they're going to take over the world. And in reality, you're going to run into a scale issue at some point or another. The question is there a particular piece of the scale that you can overcome?
Yeah. And are you willing to jump the process? So to scale, it means you need a second building.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you willing to do that? To scale, you need a high level manager to take over a facility for you. To scale, you've got to stop teaching. So there's all kinds of questions that we can go into. So I'm just kind of setting up. Maybe next week we can dig into that.
I'm in. All right, everybody. I think that's our time for today. It's been Paradigm Playbooks podcast.
And everyone, make it a great week.
All right. See you guys.
Know someone who could benefit from our business expertise? Send them our way. Thank you.